Welcome back to Prime for Battle. Today we're painting Krondys, son of Dracothion, one of the dragons available in the Stormcast range. You can see the list of paints that I've used on the screen right now. I had someone reach out to me recently and ask if I'd be interested in painting this one for them, and while I enjoyed painting Iona's Cryptborn so much that I really just had to jump in and paint one of these Stormcast dragons again. So sit back and relax, and I hope you enjoy. To start this one off, I've gone with a Chaos Black Prime and then a Phoenician Purple base. So I've used a large brush here, and then I've just applied the Phoenician Purple over the entirety of the Krondys itself. Not the base. Let's start with the fleshy tones. I'm using Tuskor fur, which is a nice reddish sort of brown, to start building up through browns up into sort of more flesh tones. So this will work well in the shaded sort of recesses. So apply that fairly thickly, dry brushing over the Phoenician Purple. Now, over the Tuskor fur, I'm going to use some Cadian flesh tone. I'm going to apply this as a reasonably heavy dry brush, building up the highlights and whatnot over the various skin areas that I've already applied the Tuskor fur to. Just start building it up, and I'll do multiple layers until I'm happy with the amount of Tuskor fur and Phoenician Purple left in the recesses. From here I'm going to move over to part of the scales, and to start with I'm using some Celador Sky, and again I'm doing a fairly heavy dry brush of this blue over the Phoenician Purple, but leaving a little bit of the purple in some of the recesses. You can see that I'm just going through and building up that blue right across all of the scales. Now later on in the video you will see that I actually do decide to do the back of the wings in the scales as well, rather than the flesh tone. From there I've gone up to Temple Guard Blue, so I'm going to work through these blue tones over the purple and then start bringing it into the bluey green turquoisey colours for the final steps. So again, I've gone a little bit lighter with the dry brushing here, but really highlighting some of the raised areas such as the muscles and the ridges of the scales. Just applying a bit heavier dry brushing on those areas. Now coming back to the skin, using some Flayed One Flesh, which is a bit of a lighter skin tone, and in a similar sort of manner, sort of really focusing in on the raised areas around the face, the muscles, etc., and the knees, where the skin's going to be tighter against the bone. Just building those highlights up. And what I've done for the actual fleshy areas of the skin, still using the Flayed One Flesh, sort of dabbing the dry brushes into that area and building it up from the center outwards. Just to, apologies for the camera focusing in on the wingtip there, but building up with some sort of dabbing, stippling effects into the center areas of that cape, so that it sort of really builds up the sort of stretched skin look. Now to add a bit of highlight to all of this, I'm doing a very light dry brush of Corax White. Now be very careful when doing Corax White. It does build up quite easily, so you want to do a very, very light dry brush. Start less, you can always build up more. But again, just really focusing in on around the face, the really raised muscles and whatnot. That'll really allow for the turquoise color to build some nice highlights over that. So now we're going to go through with a mix of Pterodon turquoise and contrast medium. I started with about 8 parts medium to 2 parts Pterodon turquoise because it is quite a strong color. I apply that over all of the scales, and then after that I've gone across with a Coelia green shade and just allowed that to lap over the edges of where the turquoise mix was, so that you get some sort of green blending into the skin areas. I know you can see that the scales are all quite nicely done with the greens and the turquoise. Now we're going to move over to the gold. To start with, we're going to do a base of Retributor armor over the entirety of the gold, wrist guards and the chest plate around his neck and on the horns as well. And then from there, we're going to do some highlights on the edges and raised areas with Liberator gold. Just apply that around all the ridges, edges, the little rivets, anywhere that you think the light might catch a bit more. You can sort of tell from where the light from your painting desk is hitting actually on how the light might affect with the gold. Now I'm just going to go through to the mask and the twin-tailed comets on the gold here and fill that in with Corax white. You may need a couple of thin layers here, but my Corax white has been pretty good for me lately, but a couple of thin layers just to build up a nice smooth white. And now I'm going to go through and do all of the nails and the fur that Krondys has in Black Templar, which is a nice sort of semi-translucent black. So it will allow a little bit of the colours from underneath to show through, but it is great for nails and fur and whatnot. And just going to touch up around the lips with some Carabao Crimson, just to bring a bit of pinky tones around the lips, around the nostrils, etc. Coming back now to the gold, I'm going to apply a Reikland Flesh shade over the gold. I think shades, if you've watched many of my videos, really important, especially on metallics. And the Reikland Flesh shade with these golds will make it a nice warm reddish earthy gold, which I think will work really well with Krondys and his sort of more natural dragon skin tones. Now I'm going to apply some null oil over the white, just apply a bit of sort of recessed shading and tone into those white areas so that they're not 100% clean. And then just a little Pilar Glacier contrast just in those little details around the end of the twin-tailed comets there and around the eyes of the face in the chest plate. Now come back with some Reikland Flesh shade just to work on the twin-tailed comet marking in the chest of Krondys there. So I start by just sort of tracing out the edges and then sort of a little bit of a clean brush just feathering out the sort of dragging out the shade into those areas of that. Then again with a Corax white dry brush, just very lightly going over all of the claws and on his feet and his hands, and on the ends of the wings as well, just to add a bit of tone to those black. And then we're using some Thunderhawk blue to highlight the fur. Thunderhawk blue works really well to highlight black tones. Gives a sort of impression of light catching on a matte black type surface. Now we're moving on to the base. If you've seen my previous videos, I'm using a very similar style, doing the entirety of the base in Rhinox hide to start with. From Rhinox hide we move on to Doombull brown, and again applying this over the entirety of the base, just dry brushing reasonably heavily over the entire thing. Next up we're doing Tau light ochre, again over the entirety of the base. Just dry brushing. You don't want to go too hard with the Tau light ochre, it is quite a strong colour. So make sure that you take most of that paint off on a napkin or a tissue or something, and then just build it up slowly to the level that you're happy with. From there we're focusing in a little bit more on the stone on the base using Dawnstone. So we're doing all of the pillars and stuff that Krondys is sort of perched on. So I'm applying that with a smaller dry brush just to really focus in. Next up, coming back over that stonework with Corax White, again with a smaller dry brush. I've just bought a cheap pack of makeup brushes from a local store, $10 for a pack of about 8 of various sizes, and they're great. Dry brushes get destroyed quite quickly. Then I'm just using a little bit of Coelia green shade, and I'm applying that into the recesses and around some of the edges and where the stonework touches the ground, just to show a little bit of mold and discoloration and weathering. And there we have it. Krondys, son of Dracothion, all finished off with my additional base touches there with a static grass sort of tufts and some flowers. What an absolute joy this model is. Given that it's fairly large areas, don't be too intimidated. You don't have to put too much time into this one, especially when you're doing a lot of dry brush work. I hope you enjoyed. As always, if you could like and subscribe, it would really help. And I'll see you next time on the battlefield. Bye for now.